Yeah, so this is a book. It's called "A Rich Brew: How Cafes Created Modern Jewish Culture," and it really is a book that I never thought I'm going to write as somebody who was trained as a literary scholar. But when I became very interested in, it started with my interest in Hebrew modernism in Europe and kind of trying to see where people were, what was the urban experience, and how it's reflected in literature. I started asking myself, where actually these people were, when they moved from small shtetls or from one city to another as immigrants. And you read the literature and you see kind of the influence of German and Russian and Polish and English and Yiddish and Hebrew and all, but where actually did it take place? And when I started doing research, I came again and again to coffee houses as important places. And it took a few years until I really understood, when you look at the literature, how much Jewish literature in all these different languages, including in Yiddish, is in coffee houses. From Sholem Aleichem in Cafe Fanconi in Odessa to Romanisches Cafe in Berlin or Cafe Royale in New York, whether people are talking about the real places or kind of fictional within the literature and the poetry. And in the beginning I thought that, okay, I come to these places just because I love, these are all places that don't exist anymore, but I love the kind of the contemporary coffee houses and cafe culture. I love reading and writing and walking in these places. But then I understood that there's a lot more to it. And in the beginning I thought that, it's just going to be a few articles that I'm going to write and that's it. I'm going to move on to others. But people were so interested, and people started sending me materials and photographs and postcards and stories. And I felt that there's something very kind of personal connection. Again, it's generational. There are people who still remember it, and even not, they had kind of memories from families. And so I decided, okay, I need to focus on it, and I need to do more research. It really started just in Europe, in a few cities, but then people said, what about New York? What about Cafe Royale? What about Lower East Side? And what about Tel Aviv? Well, of course I know Tel Aviv very well, but I wasn't aware of the kind of the multilingual and how embedded it was with kind of this Jewish culture in many different ways. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was a lot of, it took much longer time to write it than I thought. And, I did a lot of research and finding materials about the places themselves in archival materials, also in newspapers, in memoirs, and then the literature itself, and kind of put it all together and try and get a great picture of this culture that really thrived, kind of between the mid-19th century until the middle of the 20th century, right? In Europe it was gone by the time of the war. In places like New York and Tel Aviv, it continues all the way to the 60s and 70s, and then kind of was on decline. So yeah, that's the project and the book.